She was forced to marry a cold, older millionaire, but what he did on their wedding night left her breathless. Hi, my beautiful people! Welcome back again with part 2. If you missed part 1, don't worry. You can visit my channel and watch it first. All right, let's start the story with love. Yes, you do. And I deserve you too. We deserve each other, Bernard. Don't forget that. That night they made love with a desperation born of fear and uncertainty. Bernard was tender and fierce, worshipping Angela's body like he needed to memorize every inch. And afterward, holding each other in the dark, they made promises. Whatever the court decides, "I'm not giving you up," Bernard whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Angela kissed his chest over his heart. "You're stuck with me, Bernard Ellison, for better or worse." I like the sound of that. Good, because I mean it. Contract or no contract, I'm your wife. And I love you. The next morning brought unexpected news. Diane appeared at breakfast, looking nervous but determined. "I need to talk to both of you," she said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. Bernard stiffened. "If you're here to add to the problems Thomas is causing, I'm here to help." Diane looked at Angela, then Bernard. "I've been horrible to you both. Jealous, bitter, cruel. But watching you these past months, seeing how you love each other, how you cared for grandmother together, I was wrong. About everything." "Diane," Angela started, but Diane held up a hand. "Let me finish. I'm testifying in the court case. I'm going to tell them what I've witnessed. How you two fell in love, how real your marriage is, how grandmother knew and approved. Thomas is using me being excluded from Dorothy's will as evidence of dysfunction in the family, but I'm going to make it clear that was my own doing, not yours." Bernard looked stunned. "Why would you do this?" "Because you're my brother, because Angela is good for you, and because grandmother would want me to." Diane's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. For all of it. Can you forgive me?" Angela spoke before Bernard could. "Of course we forgive you. Family forgives." Diane looked at Angela with gratitude and something like respect. "Grandmother was right about you. You're exactly what this family needed." After Diane left, Bernard pulled Angela into his arms. "Things are shifting. I can feel it. We're going to win this." Angela looked up at him. "Not just the case, everything. We're going to win at love, at marriage, at building a life together. Promise?" "Promise." And in the garden where Dorothy had watched her grandson fall in love, where flowers bloomed in memory of a woman who'd sacrificed everything for family, two people held each other and believed in the future they were fighting for. Chapter 6. Fighting for Everything. The court case consumed their lives. Bernard spent endless hours with lawyers, reviewing every document, preparing every argument. Angela continued working at the hospital, refusing to let Thomas's machinations change who she was. But the stress was taking its toll. Reporters had caught wind of the case, and suddenly their marriage was tabloid fodder. "Millionaire's marriage of convenience?" one headline screamed. "Nurse traps wealthy heir with dying grandmother's wish," another claimed. Angela stopped reading them, but she couldn't avoid the whispers at work. The pitying or judgmental looks from people who thought they knew her story. Some colleagues were supportive, but others kept their distance, as if scandal were contagious. She'd overheard two nurses in the break room speculating about whether she'd planned the whole thing, whether she'd deliberately targeted Bernard. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. These were people she'd worked alongside for years, people who knew her character, her dedication, her compassion. And yet they believed the worst of her, based on sensationalized headlines. One afternoon, as she was leaving her shift, a reporter cornered her in the parking lot. "Mrs. Ellison, is it true your marriage was a business arrangement? Did you marry Bernard for his money?" Angela's exhaustion snapped into anger. "I married Bernard because his grandmother asked him to find a wife before she died. Yes, there was an arrangement. Yes, he helped my family. But I fell in love with him, really, truly in love, and that's all that matters. Now leave me alone." She pushed past the reporter, heart pounding with adrenaline and frustration, and found Bernard waiting for her at the edge of the lot. He'd seen the whole thing, and his face was a storm of anger and concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm tired, Bernard. So tired of defending our marriage to strangers who don't know us, don't know what we have." Angela's voice cracked, and she hated how weak she sounded. "They act like love has to follow some prescribed path, or it's not real. Like we're liars because we didn't meet at a coffee shop or through friends." Bernard pulled her into his arms, right there in public, and kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this for you. I know. But it's what we have to deal with." Angela pulled back, looking up at him. "Bernard, your lawyers have been pushing me to be more careful with what I say, to craft my responses. But I can't do that. I can't lie or manipulate the truth. If we're going to win this, it has to be with honesty." "I know. And I love that about you." Bernard cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "My lawyers are just trying to protect us, but you're right. The truth is our best defense, even when the truth is complicated, even when the truth makes us look calculated and cold. The truth is that we found love in an unexpected place. Anyone who can't see the beauty in that isn't worth worrying about." That night they received news that made everything more complicated. Angela's father had experienced some complications from his treatment, nothing life-threatening, but requiring additional procedures and monitoring. Angela was frantic, torn between being at the hospital with her father and supporting Bernard through the trial. Bernard made the decision for her. "Go, be with your father. That's where you need to be. But the hearing tomorrow, I'll handle it. Your father needs you more than I do right now." Bernard kissed her gently. "Go, love. Take care of your family." Angela spent the next 3 days at her father's bedside, while Bernard faced the preliminary hearings alone. She hated being apart from him during such a crucial time, but her father needed her. And Bernard insisted she stay. When her father was finally stable and she could return home, she found Bernard in his office, surrounded by legal documents, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. "Bernard," she crossed to him, running her hands through his hair. "When's the last time you slept?" I don't remember." He pulled her onto his lap, burying his face in her neck. "God, I missed you. I missed you too. Tell me what happened at the hearings." Bernard's arms tightened around her. "Thomas's lawyers brought up the timing of everything. Your father's illness, our wedding, the treatment payments. They made it sound calculated, cold, like I was buying a wife to secure an inheritance. But that's not what happened, isn't it?" Bernard's voice was bleak. "Angela, I did offer to pay for your father's treatment in exchange for marriage. That's exactly what I did. And then we fell in love." Angela pulled back to look at him. "Bernard, the beginning of our story doesn't define the whole story. Yes, we started with a transaction, but we built something real. Don't let Thomas make you forget that." "I'm not forgetting. But I'm afraid the court won't see it the way we do." Angela kissed him softly. "Then we make them see it. We show them what we have. Bernard, I'm not ashamed of how we started. I'm proud of what we've become. The next few weeks were brutal." Diane testified, emotional and honest, about witnessing Bernard and Angela fall in love. She described late nights seeing them talk for hours, the way Bernard started smiling again, how Angela brought warmth to a house that had been cold for too long. Angela's brother testified about how Bernard had supported his education, how he'd watched his sister transform from exhausted and burdened to happy and loved. He spoke about Bernard attending family dinners, being present in ways that went far beyond any contract. But Thomas's lawyers were relentless. They brought up every financial transaction, every legal document, painting a picture of cold calculation. They questioned whether love could develop so quickly, whether Angela had simply adapted to her new wealthy lifestyle. The day Angela took the stand was the hardest. Thomas's lead attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Harrison, went for the jugular. "Ms. Morris, excuse me, Mrs. Ellison, you claim you fell in love with your husband after marrying him for money. Isn't that convenient?" Angela kept her voice steady. "I didn't marry Bernard for money. I married him to save my father's life." "There's a difference." "Is there? Your father needed expensive treatment. Bernard needed a wife. You both got what you wanted. Yes, and then something unexpected happened. We fell in love. How convenient that this love developed right when you needed it to remain in a wealthy lifestyle. Angela's temper flared. I lived in a tiny apartment before Bernard. I worked 12-hour shifts. I was happy in my life, even with its struggles. Bernard didn't save me from poverty. He gave me a chance to save my father. What we built after that had nothing to do with money. Then why stay? If it's not about the money, why remain married to a man you barely knew? Because I love him. Angela looked directly at Bernard, seeing his eyes wet with tears. Because he's kind and generous and broken in ways that match my broken places. Because we understand each other. Because when I come home exhausted, he makes sure I eat. Because when he's drowning in work stress, I make him laugh. Because we've built a partnership based on honesty and respect and genuine affection. How touching. Miss Harrison's voice dripped sarcasm. But Mrs. Ellison, isn't it true that your marriage contract includes a substantial financial settlement if you complete the 2-year term? Yes. So regardless of love, you have a financial incentive to claim this marriage is real. Angela felt the trap closing, but refused to back down. I have a financial settlement written into a contract we both signed honestly. But I would tear up that contract tomorrow if it meant keeping Bernard. The money means nothing compared to what we have. Easy to say when you're already living in luxury. I lived without luxury for years. I can do it again. Angela's voice was firm. What I can't live without is Bernard. That's the truth, whether you believe it or not. When Bernard took the stand, he was equally honest and vulnerable. He admitted to approaching Angela with a business proposition, to crafting a contract that would benefit them both. But when asked about his feelings for his wife, his voice broke. I thought I was protecting myself. I thought a marriage without love would be safe, controllable. But Angela broke through every wall I'd built. She made me want to be better, to feel again, to risk my heart even though I was terrified. Losing her would destroy me in a way that losing this company never could. Yet you're fighting to keep the company, Ms. Harrison pointed out, because my grandmother built it. Because it funds medical research and scholarships and programs that help people like Angela save lives every day. I'm fighting for her legacy, not for money. Bernard looked at the judge. If I could give Thomas everything and keep Angela, I would. But my grandmother wanted the company to stay in hands that would honor her vision, and I'm fighting to honor that. The judge called a recess, and Bernard and Angela found a quiet corner to hold each other. You were amazing, Bernard whispered. So were you. Angela kissed him. Whatever happens, we're together. That's what matters. But that evening brought a development that shook them both. Bernard's lawyers pulled them into a private meeting with grim faces. Thomas is offering a settlement, the head lawyer said. He'll drop the case if Bernard agrees to give him 40% of the company and the estate. Bernard's face went white. 40%? That would give him controlling interest if he partnered with any other shareholder. We know, but it would end this now. You'd keep Angela, keep most of the company, and avoid a trial that could expose more details of your arrangement. Angela felt sick. What are you recommending? The lawyers exchanged glances. Honestly, we think you should consider it. The trial is risky. If the judge rules against you, you lose everything. This way, you keep most of what matters. Most, Bernard said hollowly. But not my grandmother's company intact. Not her legacy whole. Bernard, Angela took his hand. What do you want to do? He looked at her, and she saw him warring with himself. Safety versus principle, certainty versus risk. I need to think about it. That night they barely slept. Bernard paced their bedroom, while Angela sat on the bed, watching him struggle with the decision. If I settle, Thomas wins. He gets part of my grandmother's company without deserving it. But you keep me. You keep most of the company. You keep our life. Bernard stopped pacing, looking at her with anguished eyes. What if I'm being selfish by fighting this? What if I lose everything because I'm too proud to compromise? Angela stood, crossing to him. This isn't about pride. This is about honoring your grandmother's wishes. She left the company to you because she trusted you to protect it. What would she want you to do? I don't know. Bernard's voice broke. She's not here to ask. Yes, she is. Angela pressed her hand over his heart. She's here. What's she telling you? Bernard closed his eyes, and Angela watched emotions play across his face. Grief, fear, determination. When he opened his eyes again, they held resolve. She'd tell me to fight. To not let Thomas bully his way into something he abandoned years ago. To protect the people who depend on the foundation, on the scholarships, on all the programs the company funds. Then that's your answer. But if I lose, then we rebuild. Together. Angela cupped his face. Bernard, I meant what I said on the stand. I don't need this house or the money or any of it. I need you. Everything else is just details. You'd really be okay with losing all of this. I'd be heartbroken for you, for your grandmother's legacy. But as long as I have you, I have everything that matters. Bernard kissed her desperately, and Angela poured everything she felt into the kiss. Love, support, faith, commitment. I love you so much, Bernard whispered against her lips. I love you too. So fight for what matters. I'll be right beside you. The next day, Bernard told his lawyers they were rejecting the settlement. Thomas's response was swift and vicious. He leaked details of the contract to the press, painting Bernard and Angela as cold conspirators who'd manipulated a dying woman. The public backlash was immediate and brutal. Angela faced harassment at work, reporters camping outside the hospital. Bernard's company's stock took a hit as shareholders worried about the scandal. But through it all, they stood together. Bernard started coming to pick Angela up from every shift, shielding her from reporters. Angela attended every court appearance, sitting in the front row so Bernard could see her support. One evening, after a particularly brutal day in court, they returned home to find something waiting for them, a video. Bernard's lawyers had found security footage from the hospital chapel, from the night Bernard had first approached Angela with his proposal. They'd also found footage from the weeks and months after, showing Bernard waiting for Angela after shifts, bringing her coffee, holding her when she was exhausted. We can use this, the lawyer said. Show the court how your relationship evolved. It's proof that whatever the arrangement started as, it became something real. Angela watched the footage with tears streaming down her face. There she was, exhausted and desperate, meeting Bernard in that chapel. And there they were in the weeks after, their body language shifting from formal to comfortable to intimate. It's like watching us fall in love, she whispered. Bernard pulled her close. Because that's exactly what was happening, even when we didn't realize it yet. The video became a key piece of evidence. In court, as it played for the judge, Angela watched Thomas's face fall. This wasn't what he'd expected. Cold transaction, maybe, but not genuine affection developing over time. Diane testified again, this time with the video as context. I watched my brother come back to life. That's what Angela did for him. And if their marriage started as an arrangement, so what? My grandmother understood that sometimes love needs a push to get started. Angela's father, recovered enough to testify, spoke emotionally about Bernard's care for their family. He didn't just pay for treatment and disappear. He visited, he asked questions, he cared. That's not the action of a man in a business deal. That's the action of a man becoming family. The final day of testimony came, and both Bernard and Angela were called back to the stand for closing questions. The judge looked at them both and asked simply, "Do you love each other?" "Yes," they answered in unison. "And would you have married each other if not for the arrangement?" Bernard spoke first. "Honestly, probably not. I was too closed off, too scared of being hurt again. The arrangement gave me a safe way to let someone into my life. But what Angela and I built went beyond that safety. We chose each other every day, even after the contract's purpose was fulfilled." Angela nodded. "I might not have met Bernard at all without the arrangement. We lived in different worlds. But once we did meet, once we started really seeing each other, that's when love happened. Not because of money or contracts, but because we fit. The judge nodded thoughtfully. I'll have my decision within the week. The waiting was agony. Bernard couldn't work, couldn't focus on anything. Angela took time off from the hospital to be with him. They spent hours talking about what they'd do if they lost, where they'd live, how they'd rebuild. We could move somewhere small, Angela suggested. I could work at any hospital. You could consult, build something new. Would you be happy, leaving everything behind? Bernard, I left my old life behind when I married you. I can do it again if I need to, as long as we're together. They sat in the courtroom, hands clasped as the judge entered. Angela's heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. This was it, the moment that would determine not just their financial future, but the validation of their love story. I've reviewed all the evidence, all the testimony, and I've reached a decision. The judge looked at Bernard and Angela. This case has been unusual, to say the least. There's no question that this marriage began as an arrangement designed to fulfill the terms of Mrs. Dorothy Ellison's will. Angela's heart sank. The way the judge phrased it made their love sound calculated, cold. However, the judge continued, and Angela felt Bernard's grip tighten. Intent matters less than result. What I've seen is two people who entered into an unusual agreement and built something genuine. Love doesn't always develop conventionally, and questioning its validity based on how it started sets a dangerous precedent. Hope flickered in Angela's chest. She glanced at Bernard and saw tears gathering in his eyes. Furthermore, Mrs. Dorothy Ellison knew about the arrangement. She approved it. She watched it become real. Her wishes were clear. She wanted her grandson married and settled. He is both. Therefore, I'm ruling in favor of Bernard Ellison. The will stands as written. Bernard's grip on Angela's hand tightened painfully, but she didn't care. They'd won, not just the case, but the acknowledgement that their love was real, was valid, was worth protecting. Thomas stood, red-faced and angry, but the judge silenced him with a look. Mr. Thomas Ellison, your attempt to profit from your nephew's unusual circumstances reflects poorly on you. This court finds no merit in your case. You're dismissed. As Thomas stormed out, Bernard pulled Angela into his arms, kissing her in front of everyone. When they pulled apart, both crying, he whispered, "We did it. We won." "No," Angela corrected, smiling through tears. "We won the moment we fell in love. This was just everyone else catching up." Bernard laughed, a sound of pure joy and relief, and kissed her again. Around them, people applauded. Diane, Angela's father and brother, friends who'd stood by them through this ordeal. But Bernard and Angela only had eyes for each other. "I love you," Bernard said against her lips. "So much, forever." "Forever," Angela agreed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. That night, back at the estate, they celebrated with Diane, Angela's father and brother and close friends. But eventually Bernard pulled Angela away to the garden, to Dorothy's bench. "I need to ask you something." He knelt down, and Angela's breath caught. "Bernard, we're already married." "I know, but I want to do this right this time." He pulled out a ring, not the one from their contract wedding, but a new one, clearly chosen with care. "Angela Morris Ellison, will you marry me again? Not because of a contract or a dying grandmother's wish, but because I love you with everything I am and want to spend my life proving that to you every single day." Angela's tears fell freely. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Bernard slipped the ring on her finger, then pulled her down for a kiss that felt like a new beginning. "I was thinking," he said when they finally pulled apart, "that we could renew our vows next month. Small ceremony, just family, right here in this garden?" "Perfect," Angela smiled. "But Bernard, I have to tell you something." "What is it?" She took his hand, placing it on her stomach, her eyes shining with a secret and hope. "We might need to make it sooner than next month." "I'm pregnant, Bernard. We're having a baby." Bernard's face went through a dozen emotions, shock, joy, fear, wonder, before settling on pure happiness. He pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying at once. "A baby? We're having a baby?" "We are. Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." Bernard kissed her, then her stomach, his hands shaking. "You've given me everything, Angela. Everything I never knew I needed. Love, family, a future worth fighting for." As they held each other in the garden where they'd fought so hard to protect, where Dorothy's memory blessed them, Angela felt her heart overflow with joy. They'd started as strangers, bound by necessity, but they'd become something infinitely more precious, a family built on honesty, strengthened by struggle, and made permanent by the kind of love that only grew deeper with every challenge they faced together. Chapter 7. 2 Hearts, 3 Souls. Angela stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, trying to process the reality. Pregnant with twins. The ultrasound had confirmed it that morning, and the doctor's words kept echoing in her mind. 2 healthy heartbeats. Mrs. Ellison, congratulations. She'd expected 1 baby, hoped for 1 baby, prepared herself mentally and emotionally for 1 baby, but 2 tiny lives growing inside her, 2 hearts beating in sync with her own, 2 souls depending on her body to keep them safe and nourished. The magnitude of it was overwhelming. She heard Bernard's footsteps in the bedroom and took a deep breath. They'd been overjoyed about the pregnancy, but twins was unexpected, overwhelming, terrifying, and wonderful all at once. Angela. Bernard knocked gently on the bathroom door. "Everything okay?" She opened the door, her eyes bright with tears she couldn't quite identify as happy or scared. "Bernard, I need to tell you something." His face immediately filled with concern, and he pulled her to sit on the bed, his hands gentle on her arms. "What is it? Is something wrong with the baby?" "No, nothing's wrong, just—" Angela took his hand, placing it on her stomach. "There are 2 babies, Bernard. We're having twins." Bernard's mouth opened and closed several times, his eyes going wide with shock. "Twins, as in 2 babies. 2 humans we're responsible for." Despite her nerves, Angela laughed at his expression. "Yes, 2 babies. The doctor confirmed it this morning. 2 heartbeats, both strong and healthy." Bernard sat in stunned silence for a moment, his hand still pressed to her stomach, as if he could feel the twins already. Then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming him from shocked to elated. "Twins! We're having twins!" He started laughing, the sound full of joy and disbelief. "God, Angela, you don't do anything halfway, do you?" "Apparently not." She pulled back to look at him, searching his face. "Are you okay with this? I know it's more than we planned, more than we even discussed. Okay with it?" "Angela, I'm terrified and thrilled, and so in love with you I can barely breathe." Bernard kissed her deeply, his hands cupping her face. "We're going to have 2 babies. Our family is growing twice as fast as we expected. We need a bigger nursery. We need everything doubled." Bernard's eyes widened with realization, and Angela could see his mind already racing ahead. 2 cribs, 2 car seats, 2 of everything. "Slow down." Angela cupped his face, smiling. "We have months to prepare. Right now, let's just be happy about this." They spent the rest of the day making plans, calling family, and basking in the joy of their news. Diane cried happy tears and immediately started planning a baby shower. Angela's father and brother were overjoyed, already arguing about who would be the favorite uncle. But as the weeks passed, the pregnancy became complicated. Angela's blood pressure started climbing, and her doctor ordered bed rest. For someone who'd spent her career caring for others, being forced to rest was torture. "I feel useless," Angela complained one afternoon, lying in bed while Bernard worked from the armchair in their room. "I should be at the hospital, working, doing something productive." Bernard closed his laptop and moved to sit beside her. "You're growing 2 humans. That's literally the most productive thing anyone can do. You know what I mean. I'm not built for lying around all day. I know, love. But the babies need you to rest." Bernard placed his hand on her growing belly, which had expanded rapidly over the past weeks. "And I need you healthy and safe." Angela's eyes filled with frustrated tears. "What if I can't do this, Bernard? What if I'm not strong enough to carry them both? Then we'll face whatever comes together. But right now you're doing amazing." Bernard kissed her forehead. "The doctors are monitoring everything. You're in the best care possible. I'm scared. The admission came out small, vulnerable. Bernard lay down beside her, pulling her carefully into his arms. Me too, but Angela, we've faced everything else together. We'll face this too. Their vow renewal ceremony had to be postponed due to Angela's bed rest, but they didn't care. What mattered was the babies and Angela's health. As her pregnancy progressed, Bernard became even more protective. He moved his entire office into their bedroom so he could work near her. He monitored every meal, every medication, every doctor's appointment with the vigilance of someone who'd already lost too much. "You're hovering," Angela said one evening, but her voice was gentle. "I know. I can't help it." Bernard sat on the edge of the bed, looking vulnerable. "Every time I think about something happening to you or the babies, I can't breathe, Angela." She took his hand, guiding it to where one of the twins was kicking. "Feel that? They're strong, Bernard. We're all strong. We're going to make it through this." But at her next appointment, the doctor's expression made Angela's heart sink. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high, Angela, and there are signs of preeclampsia. We need to monitor you very closely." Bernard's hand tightened on hers. "What does that mean?" "It means that if her condition worsens, we may need to deliver the babies early, possibly much earlier than we'd like." Angela felt fear grip her chest. "How early?" "We'll do everything we can to keep them cooking as long as possible. But Angela, I need you to understand, your health comes first. If we have to choose between you and the babies—" "No." Angela's voice was firm. "We don't make that choice. We save all of us or none of us." "Angela," Bernard started, his voice cracking. "I mean it, Bernard. I won't choose between myself and our children. We find a way to save everyone." The doctor looked between them, understanding the determination in Angela's eyes. "We'll do everything medically possible. But you need to follow every restriction, take every medication exactly as prescribed. This is serious, Angela." The drive home was silent, both of them processing the gravity of the situation. Once inside, Bernard helped Angela back to bed, then sat beside her, his head in his hands. "I can't lose you," he said quietly. "Angela, if something goes wrong, if the doctors say they have to choose—" "Don't." Angela took his face in her hands. "Don't make me promise something I can't deliver. These babies are ours, Bernard. They're part of you and part of me, and I'm not giving up on them. And I'm not giving up on you." Bernard's eyes were fierce. "You're my wife, the love of my life. The babies need their mother. Then have faith that I'll be here for them. For all of you." The argument hung between them, unresolved and painful. That night Bernard held Angela carefully, and she felt his tears on her shoulder. "Talk to me," she whispered. "I'm terrified of losing you. After everything we fought for, everything we built, I can't lose you now, Angela." "You won't. I'm a fighter, remember. I've beaten every odds so far. This is different. This is life and death, and His voice broke. "I love you so much it physically hurts sometimes. The thought of a world without you in it—" "Hey." Angela turned in his arms, kissing him softly. "I'm here. I'm fighting. And I'm not planning on going anywhere." The next weeks were tense. Angela's condition fluctuated, some days better, some days worse. Bernard barely slept, waking at every movement to check on her. Diane visited daily, bringing meals and sitting with Angela so Bernard could rest. One afternoon, while Bernard was downstairs taking a work call, Diane sat on the bed beside Angela. "He's terrified, you know. I've never seen my brother like this." "I know." Angela placed her hand on her belly, where the twins were active. "I'm scared too. But I can't show it, because if I do, Bernard will fall apart. You don't have to be strong all the time, Angela. You're allowed to be scared. If I let myself feel how scared I really am, I won't be able to keep going." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "These babies, they're everything. They're proof that Bernard and I are real, that our love created something beautiful. I can't lose them, Diane." Diane took her hand. "You won't. You're the strongest person I know. You fell in love with my impossible brother, stood up to Thomas in court, and now you're carrying 2 babies while on bed rest. If anyone can do this, it's you. At her next appointment, the news was worse. Angela's organs were showing signs of stress, and the babies, while healthy, were measuring small for their gestational age. "I'm recommending we prepare for delivery soon," the doctor said. "Possibly within the next few weeks." "But they'll be too early," Angela protested. "They need more time. And you need to survive." The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "Angela, if we wait too long, you could have a stroke or organ failure. We're walking a tightrope here." Bernard looked like he might be sick. "How early are we talking?" "Ideally, we get you to 32 weeks. But if your condition worsens before then, we'll have no choice but to deliver immediately." Angela was currently at 29 weeks. 3 more weeks felt like a lifetime. That night, lying in bed, Angela and Bernard had the hardest conversation of their marriage. "If something goes wrong during delivery," Bernard started, his voice barely above a whisper, "if the doctors have to choose, they won't have to choose because we're all making it through." "Angela, please, I need to know your wishes." "My wish is for you to have faith in me." Angela turned to look at him, her eyes fierce despite her exhaustion. "Bernard, I know you're scared. So am I. But I need you to believe that I'm going to survive this, that our babies are going to be okay. Can you do that for me?" Bernard's face crumpled. "I'm trying. But Angela, I've lost so many people I love. My parents, my grandmother. I can't lose you too." "You won't. Look at me." She waited until his eyes met hers. "I love you, Bernard Ellison. I love our babies. And I'm going to fight with everything I have to make sure we're all here to be a family together. Promise me." "I promise to fight. That's all I can promise." It wasn't enough for Bernard, but it was all Angela could give. The next week, at a routine checkup, everything changed. Angela's blood pressure spiked dangerously, and the doctor made an immediate decision. "We're admitting you to the hospital. The babies need to be delivered within the next few days." Angela felt panic grip her chest. "But it's too early." "It's early, but survivable with our NICU. Angela, waiting any longer puts all 3 of you at risk." Bernard held her hand as they admitted her, as nurses hooked her up to monitors, as doctors discussed delivery plans. His face was a mask of control, but Angela could see the terror in his eyes. That night, in the hospital room, Bernard sat beside her bed, holding her hand like a lifeline. "I know you're scared," Angela said quietly. "But Bernard, I need you to be strong for me now." "Can you do that?" "I don't know how to be strong when I'm this terrified. You do it by being here, by believing in us, by holding my hand and reminding me what we're fighting for." Bernard kissed her hand, his tears falling on her skin. "You're fighting for our family, for our boys." "Boys?" Angela smiled through her own tears. "You think they're both boys?" "I know they are. 2 little versions of you, stubborn, brave, beautiful. They'll be like you too. Smart, kind, protective." They talked through the night about their sons, about the life they'd build together, about the future they were fighting to reach. And when dawn came, Angela was ready. "Let's meet our boys," she said, squeezing Bernard's hand. The doctor came in with the surgical team, explaining the emergency cesarean procedure. Angela would be awake, Bernard could be in the room, and the NICU team was standing by. "Are you ready?" the doctor asked. Angela looked at Bernard, at the man she'd married for convenience and stayed with for love, and nodded. "We're ready." As they wheeled her to surgery, Bernard walked beside her, never letting go of her hand. And Angela sent up a prayer to Dorothy, to her mother, to anyone who might be listening. "Keep us all safe. Let us all survive. Let our family be whole." Chapter 8. The Greatest Fear. The operating room was cold and bright, filled with the controlled chaos of medical professionals preparing for emergency surgery. Angela lay on the table, her body trembling despite the warm blankets they'd placed over her. Bernard sat beside her head, still in his street clothes, covered by a surgical gown, his hand gripping hers like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "I'm scared," Angela whispered, her voice breaking the professional calm around them. Bernard leaned close, his forehead touching hers. I know, love, but you're the strongest person I've ever known. You're going to get through this. What if I don't? What if something goes wrong? Angela's voice cracked with fear she'd been holding back for weeks. Then I'll be right here, every second. You're not alone in this, Angela. You've never been alone since the day you became mine. Bernard's voice was fierce, despite the tears in his eyes. But you're going to make it through. You have to. Our boys need their mother and I need my wife. Promise me something. Angela gripped his hand tighter as the surgical team continued their preparations around them. Anything. If it comes down to choosing between me and the babies. Don't, Bernard's voice broke. Please don't ask me to think about that. I have to. Bernard, if something happens to me, I need to know you'll be okay. That you'll love our sons enough for both of us. That you'll tell them about me. That you won't shut down and become that cold man I first met. Angela, promise me, please. I need to hear you say it. Tears streamed down her face, and Bernard wiped them away with shaking hands. I promise, he whispered, his voice raw. But only because you're making me. Because in my heart, I know we're all making it through this together. You, me, and our boys. We're all going to be okay. The anesthesiologist began administering the spinal block, and Angela felt Bernard's hand shake in hers. Talk to me, she said, needing to focus on something other than the procedure. Tell me about our sons. What are we going to name them? Bernard's voice was rough with emotion, but he played along. I was thinking, Harrison, after your father, Harold, and Gabriel, because my grandmother always said angels watch over us, and you've been mine. Tears slipped down Angela's face. Harrison and Gabriel Ellison. It's perfect. You're perfect. Bernard kissed her forehead as the surgical drape went up, blocking their view of the procedure. And in a few minutes, we're going to meet our boys. The surgery began, and Angela could feel pressure but no pain, the spinal block doing its job. Bernard kept talking to her, his voice steady even though she could see the fear in his eyes. Remember our first night together, he said, when I stayed in that uncomfortable chair because you asked me to? I remember. Angela's voice was weak. You looked so out of place, this powerful man folding himself into a chair that was too small. I would have slept on the floor if you'd asked. Even then, you had this pull on me. I didn't understand it at the time, but looking back, I think I started falling for you that very first night. I was terrified of you, Angela admitted. You were so cold, so distant. I thought you'd be impossible to live with. And instead you became my home. Angela squeezed his hand as she felt more pressure. Bernard, if something happens to me, please don't. I have to say this. If something happens, promise me you'll tell our sons about me. About how we met, how we fell in love, all of it. Don't hide the messy parts. Let them know their mother loved their father enough to fight for him. Bernard's tears fell on her face. Nothing is going to happen. You're going to tell them yourself. Promise me anyway. I promise. But you're going to be here, Angela. You're going to watch them grow up, help me raise them, love them. I believe that. The doctor's voice cut through their conversation. First baby is crowning. Here we go. Angela held her breath, gripping Bernard's hand so hard she thought she might break his fingers. Then she heard it, a tiny, angry cry that made her heart explode with love and terror. It's a boy, the doctor announced. Good lungs on this one. Bernard let out a sob of relief. That's Harrison. Our Harrison. They whisked the baby away to the waiting NICU team, and Angela craned her neck, desperate for a glimpse of her son. Is he okay? She asked frantically. Is he breathing? Is he? He's small but strong, a NICU nurse called out. Good color, good respiratory effort. We're just going to examine him. Second baby coming, the doctor said. Almost there, Angela. You're doing great. 2 minutes later, another cry filled the room, this one slightly weaker but no less determined. Another boy. Twins, boys. Congratulations. Gabriel, Angela whispered, her voice breaking. That's our Gabriel. Bernard was crying openly now, his tears mixing with hers as they held each other. You did it, Angela. You did it. Our sons are here. But the celebration was short-lived. One of the NICU doctors approached with a serious expression. "Mr. and Mrs. Ellison, the twins are stable, but they're very premature. We need to get them to the NICU immediately for monitoring and support. You'll be able to see them once Mrs. Ellison is in recovery." "Are they going to be okay?" Bernard's voice cracked with fear and hope, battling for dominance. "They're fighters like their mother, but the next few hours are critical. We'll keep you updated on everything." The doctor's expression was kind but honest. Premature twins face challenges, respiratory issues, temperature regulation, feeding difficulties. But your boys came out crying, which is excellent. "They're small but mighty. Can I see them before they go?" Angela asked, her voice weak but desperate. Just for a moment. They wheeled the isolettes past Angela, giving her a brief glimpse of two tiny babies covered in tubes and wires, so small they looked impossibly fragile. Harrison's little fist was clenched tight, already fighting. Gabriel's eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling rapidly with effort. Her heart broke and soared simultaneously. "They're beautiful," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Just like you," Bernard said, kissing her temple, his own tears falling freely. "They're perfect. Our perfect boys. Take care of them," Angela called out to the NICU team as they wheeled the babies away. "Please take care of my babies." "We will, Mrs. Ellison, we promise." The rest of the surgery passed in a blur. The doctor worked to close the incision, and Angela felt her body growing heavier, exhaustion pulling at her like a physical weight. She'd given everything to bring these babies into the world, and now there was nothing left. "Stay with me," Bernard said urgently, his voice cutting through the fog. "Angela, keep your eyes open. I'm just tired." Her voice was barely audible now. "I know, love, but stay awake for me. Just a little longer. The boys need you. I need you." But Angela's eyes kept drifting closed. The beeping of monitors changed pitch, and she heard urgent voices around her, felt a flurry of activity that seemed very far away, blood pressure dropping. "She's losing too much blood. Get more units ready. Angela!" Bernard's voice was sharp with panic now. "Angela, look at me." She tried to respond, tried to tell him she loved him, tried to promise she'd fight to come back to him and their sons. But darkness was pulling her under, warm and inviting after so much pain and fear. The last thing she heard was Bernard's voice, desperate and broken. "Don't leave me. Please, Angela, don't leave me." Then everything went black. Bernard stood in the hallway outside the operating room, his hands covered in Angela's blood from when he touched her face, and felt his world crumbling. The doctors had pushed him out, needed room to work, and now he was alone with his terror. Angela's father and brother had arrived, summoned by Diane, and they found Bernard pacing like a caged animal. "What happened?" Harold demanded. "Or where's Angela?" "She's bleeding." "They can't stop the bleeding." Bernard's voice was hollow. "The babies are in the NICU. They're alive, but Angela—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Harold gripped his shoulder. "She's strong, son. She's a fighter. I can't lose her. I can't." Bernard sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "We just had our boys. We're supposed to raise them together, she promised me. And she'll keep that promise." Diane sat beside him, taking his hand. "Angela won't give up. She loves you and those babies too much to give up." Minutes turned into an hour, then 2. Every time the operating room doors opened, Bernard jumped up, desperate for news. But it was always someone else, not Angela's surgical team. Finally, a doctor emerged, his scrubs splattered with blood. Bernard's heart stopped. "Mr. Ellison?" Bernard stood on shaking legs. "Is she? Your wife lost a significant amount of blood. We had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to stop the bleeding." The doctor's face was grave. "She's critical but stable. We're moving her to ICU for close monitoring." "But she's alive." Bernard could barely get the words out. "She's alive. But Mr. Ellison, the next 24 hours are crucial. She's very weak and there's a risk of complications. You need to prepare yourself." "Can I see her?" "Once she's settled in ICU, but she's unconscious and will be for some time. Her body needs to rest and heal." Bernard nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The doctor squeezed his shoulder and left, leaving Bernard standing in the hallway with his world hanging in the balance. "She made it through surgery," Diane said, coming to stand beside him. "That's something, Bernard. That's hope. She's not out of danger. No, but she's alive, and that means she's still fighting." Harold approached, his eyes red. "What about my grandsons? Can we see them?" The NICU nurse, who'd been waiting nearby, stepped forward. "I can take you to see the twins now. They're small but doing remarkably well, all things considered." Bernard looked torn between staying near Angela and seeing his sons. "Go," Harold said gently. "See your boys. I'll stay here and wait for Angela to come out of surgery. If anything changes, I'll come get you immediately." The NICU was overwhelming, rows of isolettes, beeping monitors, tiny babies fighting for life. The nurse led Bernard to a corner where two isolettes sat side by side, each containing a baby so small Bernard was afraid to breathe near them. "This is Harrison," the nurse said, indicating the isolette on the left. "He's 3 pounds 2 ounces. And this is Gabriel, 3 pounds even. For premature twins, they're doing exceptionally well. Strong heartbeats, breathing with minimal support." Bernard stared at his sons, these tiny miracles he and Angela had created. They had her nose, he thought, and maybe his eyes. It was hard to tell when they were so small, so fragile. "Can I touch them?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Of course. Wash your hands first, then you can reach through the portholes." Bernard did as instructed, then carefully, so carefully, reached into Harrison's isolette. The baby's hand was smaller than Bernard's thumb, but when he touched it, tiny fingers wrapped around his, and Bernard felt his heart break open. "Hey, little man," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm your daddy. Your mom and I have been waiting to meet you." He spent time with each twin, talking to them softly, touching their impossibly tiny hands and feet, marveling at their perfection despite their size. "Your mama is a fighter," he told them. "The strongest person I know, and she's fighting right now to come back to us. So you boys need to be strong too, okay? We're all going to be together soon. We're going to be a family." A NICU doctor approached, introducing himself and explaining the twins' condition in detail. They were on oxygen support, feeding tubes, heart monitors. They'd need to stay in the NICU for weeks, possibly months, until they were strong enough to go home. "But the prognosis is good," Bernard asked desperately. "Very good. Barring unforeseen complications, both boys should make full recoveries." "They're fighters, Mr. Ellison. They get that from their mother." Bernard stayed with the twins for another hour before Harold came to find him. "Angela's in ICU. They're letting family in one at a time." Bernard followed Harold with his heart in his throat. The ICU was quiet, dim, filled with the sounds of machines keeping people alive. Angela lay in a bed surrounded by monitors, tubes, and wires, looking impossibly small and fragile. Bernard sank into the chair beside her bed and took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. "Hey, beautiful," he whispered. "I just came from seeing our boys. Angela, they're perfect. Tiny, but perfect. Harrison has your nose, I think. And Gabriel has this little birthmark on his shoulder that looks like a heart." She didn't respond, didn't move. The ventilator breathed for her, the monitors tracking every beat of her heart. "You have to come back to me," Bernard said, his voice breaking. "Our sons need their mother. I need my wife. Please, Angela, please fight. I know you're tired, I know you've been through hell, but please don't leave me." He stayed by her side through the night, talking to her, telling her about the twins, about how much he loved her, begging her to wake up. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting medications. The ICU doctor stopped by around midnight with Angela's latest labs. "Her numbers are improving slightly," he said. "That's a good sign, but she's still critical, Mr. Ellison. The next few hours will tell us a lot." Bernard nodded, unwilling to leave Angela's side even for a moment. Diane brought him coffee and food he couldn't eat. Harold sat with him for a while, both men united in their fear for the woman they loved. As dawn broke, Bernard was still there, still holding Angela's hand, still talking to her. "Remember our wedding night?" he said, his voice hoarse from talking all night. "You asked me to stay, just to talk. I think that's when I started falling in love with you, Angela. You were so brave, asking for what you needed. Be brave now. Fight your way back to me." The monitors beeped steadily, and Bernard watched the sun rise through the ICU window, praying for a miracle. Around mid-morning, he felt it, the slightest pressure on his hand. His head snapped up, and he saw Angela's fingers move, just barely. "Angela!" He leaned closer. "Can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." Another small squeeze, deliberate this time. Bernard's heart soared. "That's it, love. Come back to me. Our boys are waiting to meet you." Over the next hours, Angela slowly emerged from unconsciousness. They removed the ventilator, and though her voice was barely a whisper, she managed one word. "Babies." "Safe," Bernard said, tears of relief streaming down his face. "They're safe and beautiful and waiting for their mama to get strong enough to hold them." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "Boys? 2 perfect boys. Harrison and Gabriel, just like we talked about." She smiled weakly, then her eyes drifted closed again, but this time it was just sleep, not unconsciousness. The doctor assured Bernard this was normal, that she needed rest to heal. Over the next week, Angela slowly improved. They moved her from ICU to a regular room, and finally, she was strong enough to be wheeled to the NICU to meet her sons. Bernard watched as they lifted Harrison and placed him carefully in Angela's arms. She looked down at her son with such pure love that Bernard felt his chest tighten with emotion. "He's so tiny," she whispered, tears falling on the baby's blanket. "He's a fighter, like his mama." Then they brought Gabriel, and Angela held both babies, one in each arm, and Bernard stood beside them, his arm around his wife, looking at his family, and felt like the luckiest man alive. "We made it," Angela said softly. "We all made it. We did, and we're never letting go of each other again." As they sat together, this family that had fought so hard to exist, Bernard sent up a silent thank you to Dorothy, to Angela's mother, to everyone who'd helped bring them to this moment. They had survived, and now finally they could begin the life they'd fought so hard to build. Chapter 9, The Longest Night. The NICU became their second home. Angela, still recovering herself, spent every moment she could beside the twins' isolettes. Bernard juggled company responsibilities with hospital visits, refusing to be away from his family for more than a few hours at a time. Harrison and Gabriel were growing stronger each day, defying the odds that came with their early arrival. Harrison was the feistier of the two, already showing signs of the determined personality Angela swore he'd inherited from Bernard. Gabriel was quieter, more observant, his dark eyes seeming to take in everything around him. "They're going to be heartbreakers," Diane said one afternoon, watching Bernard carefully change Gabriel's diaper through the isolette portholes. "Just like their father." "Their father was never a heartbreaker," Angela said from her wheelchair, where she sat beside Harrison's isolette. "He was just waiting for the right woman to break through." Bernard smiled at her, that soft smile reserved only for his wife. "Best decision I ever made, asking you to marry me, even though it was for all the wrong reasons, especially because of that. If we'd met any other way, I would have been too scared to let you in." Bernard finished with Gabriel and came to stand beside Angela, his hand on her shoulder. "Everything we went through brought us here. I wouldn't change a single thing." Angela reached up to cover his hand with hers. "Not even the fear? Not even almost losing me?" "Not even that. Because it showed me how strong you are, how much I love you, how precious every moment is." Bernard knelt beside her wheelchair. "Angela, watching you fight to survive, watching our sons fight to breathe, it changed me, made me understand that love isn't about protecting yourself from pain. It's about being willing to endure anything for the people who matter." "When did you become so wise?" Angela asked, echoing words he'd once said to her. "I learned from the best." Bernard kissed her hand. "From a nurse who taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help, take risks, and love with your whole heart, even when it terrifies you. The NICU nurse approached with a smile. "Mrs. Ellison, your labs came back. The doctor says you're healing beautifully. Another week and you should be cleared to go home." Angela's smile faltered. "Home without my babies?" "They'll follow as soon as they're ready. Could be a few weeks, could be a couple of months. Every baby is different." The nurse's voice was kind. "But you can visit as much as you want. And we encourage parents to be here, to bond with the babies, to participate in their care." After the nurse left, Angela's eyes filled with tears. "I can't leave them, Bernard. How am I supposed to go home and sleep in our bed while our sons are here alone?" "They're not alone. They have each other, and they have excellent medical care." Bernard knelt beside her wheelchair. "And you need to finish healing, love. You nearly died bringing these boys into the world. Your body needs rest. My body can rest here." "Angela." "No, Bernard. I know you're worried about me, but I can't leave them. Not yet. Please don't ask me to." Bernard looked torn, but he nodded. "Okay, we'll figure it out. Maybe you can stay a few more days. Transition slowly." But that night, everything changed again. Angela was dozing in the chair beside the isolettes when alarms started blaring from Gabriel's monitor. Nurses rushed over, and Angela jerked awake, her heart racing with the familiar terror that had become her constant companion. "What's happening? What's wrong with my baby?" "Nay, his oxygen saturation is dropping," a nurse said, adjusting the oxygen flow with practiced efficiency. "Probably just a Brady episode, common in preemies. We're handling it." Angela watched helplessly as they worked on her tiny son, adjusting equipment, monitoring vitals. Gabriel's numbers slowly came back up. The crisis passed, but Angela was shaking uncontrollably. This was the third time this week. Each time felt like losing him, even though the nurses assured her it was normal. "He's okay now, Mrs. Ellison," the nurse said gently, seeing Angela's distress. "These episodes look scary, but they're a normal part of premature development. His brain just forgets to tell his body to breathe sometimes. The monitors catch it and we intervene. He's going to be fine." But Angela couldn't stop shaking. She'd held it together through her own near-death experience, through watching her tiny sons fight for every breath, through the endless NICU days that blurred into nights. But this, watching Gabriel's face turn dusky, seeing his little body struggle, knowing she was powerless to help him, it was breaking her. Bernard, who'd gone home briefly to shower and change, rushed back when the hospital called him. He found Angela pale and trembling, staring at Gabriel's isolette like she was afraid to look away. "He stopped breathing," she said, her voice hollow and mechanical. "Just for a few seconds, but he stopped breathing, Bernard. But he's okay now." Bernard looked at Gabriel, who appeared peaceful now, sleeping with his oxygen support, his tiny chest rising and falling steadily. "This time, but it could happen again. It probably will happen again." Angela turned to Bernard with haunted eyes, and he saw the toll this was taking on her. "What if next time they can't get him back? What if I'm not here when it happens? What if I step away for 5 minutes and miss the moment when... Angela, breathe." Bernard pulled her into his arms, feeling how thin she'd gotten, how fragile. "The nurses said this is common. Gabriel is being monitored constantly. They know what to do. What if it's not enough?" Her voice broke. "Bernard, I almost lost them. I almost lost you. I can't go through that again. I can't watch my son die while I stand here helpless." "You won't. He won't." Bernard held her tighter. "Our boys are fighters, Angela. They get that from you. I don't feel like a fighter anymore. I feel like I'm drowning, and every time I think I can breathe again, another wave crashes over me." The next few days were grueling. Angela refused to leave the NICU, sleeping in the uncomfortable recliner beside the twins, eating only when Bernard or Diane forced food on her. Her recovery stalled as she neglected her own health to watch over her sons. Bernard tried reasoning with her, but Angela was immovable. "I need to be here. What if something happens and I'm not? On the fourth night of Angela's vigil, Bernard found her asleep in the chair, her hand through the porthole of Harrison's isolette, touching her son's tiny foot. She looked exhausted, pale, and Bernard's heart ached. He gently woke her. "Angela, love, you need to come home, even just for one night. You need a real bed, a shower, actual sleep. I can't—" "Yes, you can. The twins are stable. The nurses have our number. If anything changes, they'll call immediately." Bernard pulled her to her feet, supporting her weight as she swayed with exhaustion. "Please, Angela, you're running yourself into the ground, and if you collapse, you won't be any good to the boys." Angela looked at her sleeping sons, then back at Bernard, and finally nodded. "One night, but if anything changes, we'll be back in minutes, I promise." The house felt too big, too quiet, without the constant beeping of NICU monitors. Angela moved through it like a ghost, unable to settle, checking her phone every few seconds. "Take a bath," Bernard suggested. "I'll order food." Tried to relax, but Angela couldn't relax. She sat in the bath, staring at the wall, her mind in the NICU with her sons. When Bernard checked on her an hour later, the water was cold and she was crying. "Come on," he said gently, helping her out, wrapping her in a towel. "Let's get you to bed." He helped her into comfortable clothes, then held her as she cried out all the fear and exhaustion she'd been holding in. "I'm so scared," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see Gabriel's monitors going off, or Harrison struggling to breathe, or—" "I know. I'm scared too." Bernard kissed her forehead. "But Angela, we have to trust the doctors and nurses. They know what they're doing. What if it's not enough? What if we lose one of them, or both?" "We won't. Our boys are fighters." "Like I was supposed to be." Angela pulled back to look at him. "Bernard, I almost died. If the doctors hadn't acted when they did. But they did. You're here. The twins are here, and we're going to get through this together." That night, Bernard held Angela while she finally slept, but his own mind wouldn't quiet. He thought about how close he'd come to losing everything, how fragile their happiness still was. Harrison and Gabriel were alive, but they weren't out of danger. Any day could bring a new crisis, a new emergency. The fear was suffocating. The next morning they returned to the NICU to find both twins doing well. Harrison had gained weight, and Gabriel had gone 12 hours without any oxygen alarms. "See," Bernard said, squeezing Angela's hand. "They're getting stronger every day." Over the following weeks, the twins continued to improve. Angela established a routine, mornings at home recovering, afternoons and evenings at the NICU. Bernard worked from the hospital when he could, his laptop balanced on his knees while he watched his sons sleep. Then came the day they'd been waiting for. Harrison, the bigger twin, was cleared to come home. Angela cried happy tears as they dressed him in the tiny outfit Diane had bought, as they strapped him into the car seat that looked impossibly large around his small body, as they signed discharge papers. "One down, one to go," the NICU nurse said with a smile. "Gabriel's doing great too. Shouldn't be long before he joins his brother." At home, Angela held Harrison constantly, afraid to put him down, afraid something would go wrong now that they didn't have monitors and nurses watching every breath. "He's okay," Bernard reassured her for the 100th time. "Look at him, he's perfect. But what if he stops breathing? What if he needs help and we don't notice? We have the monitor. We have the emergency numbers. Angela, we can do this." But that first night home with Harrison was terrifying. Every sound from the baby monitor sent them both rushing to the nursery. Bernard took the first shift, sitting in the rocking chair watching Harrison sleep, while Angela tried and failed to rest. At 2 in the morning, they switched places, and Angela held Harrison against her chest, feeling his tiny heartbeat, monitoring every breath, terrified and in love in equal measure. "You're going to be okay, little man," she whispered. "You and your brother, you're both going to be just fine. You have to be, because your daddy and I have so many plans for you. We're going to love you so much, teach you so much, give you everything we never had." Harrison made a small sound in his sleep, and Angela's heart overflowed. 1 week later, Gabriel was cleared to come home. The reunion of the twins in their nursery made both Bernard and Angela cry. They placed the babies in their cribs side by side, And immediately the boys turned toward each other, as if sensing their twins' presence. They missed each other, Angela said softly, just like we'd miss each other if we were ever apart. Bernard wrapped his arms around Angela from behind, both of them watching their sons. We did it, love. We brought them home. Our family is finally complete. But that night at 3 a.m, Angela woke to silence, terrifying silence. No baby sounds, no monitor beeps from the nursery next door. She shot out of bed, her heart racing, and ran to the nursery. Bernard was right behind her, both of them expecting the worst. But when they reached the cribs, both babies were sleeping peacefully, breathing steadily, completely fine. Angela sank to the floor, her hand on her chest, trying to calm her racing heart. Bernard sat beside her, pulling her close. "This is going to take time," he said quietly. "Learning to trust that they're okay, that we're all okay. I keep waiting for something to go wrong." Angela's voice was small. "We've been through so much, survived so much. It feels like we're tempting fate by being this happy. Or maybe we've paid our dues. Maybe this is our reward for fighting so hard." Bernard tilted her face up to look at him. "Angela, we're allowed to be happy. We're allowed to have this life we fought for. I want to believe that, then believe it. Look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "I love you. I love our sons. And I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you know how grateful I am that you took a chance on a cold, closed-off man in a hospital chapel." Angela smiled through her tears. "Best decision I ever made. Second best. First best was falling in love with me. Cocky, confident. There's a difference." Bernard kissed her softly. "Come back to bed. The boys are fine. The monitor is on. We need sleep." As they settled back into bed, Angela turned to Bernard with a question that had been forming. "Do you ever regret it? How we started? The arrangement, the contract, all of it?" Bernard was quiet for a moment, then pulled her closer. "I regret that it took a contract to get me to take a chance on love. I regret being so scared that I couldn't just ask you on a proper date. But regret our story? Never. Every moment, every struggle, every fear, it all brought us here, to this life, this family, this love. I wouldn't change a single thing, even the courtroom. Thomas trying to destroy us? Even that. It made us fight for each other, prove our love was real. We came out stronger." Angela nestled into his arms. "I love you, Bernard Ellison. My cold, brooding, surprisingly romantic husband. I love you too, my brave, stubborn, impossibly perfect wife." They fell asleep holding each other, and in the nursery next door, Harrison and Gabriel slept peacefully. Two tiny miracles born of an arrangement that became the greatest love story either parent had ever known. But even as they slept, Angela's mind held one lingering fear, the fear that their happiness was too perfect, too complete, too fragile. She pushed it away, choosing instead to focus on Bernard's warmth, on the sound of their son's breathing through the monitor, on the life they'd built together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to treasure. Tonight they were together, and that was enough. In the morning they would wake to the twins crying for breakfast. They would stumble through diaper changes and feedings, would call each other for help when one baby wouldn't stop crying, would laugh at how unprepared they felt despite reading every parenting book available. They would be a family, messy and imperfect and overwhelmingly full of love, and somewhere, Angela liked to think, Dorothy was watching with a satisfied smile, knowing that her dying wish had brought together two souls who needed each other more than they'd ever known. The arrangement that had started in desperation had become a love story for the ages, and their sons, Harrison and Gabriel, were the beautiful proof that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most extraordinary endings. Chapter 10. A Love Reborn. 6 months had passed since the twins came home from the NICU, and the Ellison estate had transformed from a quiet mansion into a home filled with laughter. baby cries, and the beautiful chaos of family life. Angela stood in the nursery doorway, watching Bernard change Gabriel's diaper while Harrison lay in his crib, babbling happily at the mobile above him. Bernard was singing softly, some made-up song about brave little boys, and Angela felt her heart overflow with love. "You're getting good at that," she said, leaning against the doorframe. Bernard looked up with a smile. "I've had a lot of practice, though I still think Gabriel times these diaper explosions specifically for when I'm wearing my good shirts. He's strategic, like his father." Angela crossed to Harrison's crib, lifting her son into her arms. He was getting so big, both boys were. They'd caught up to their adjusted age milestones, thriving in ways the doctors said was remarkable for twins who'd come so early. "Da-da-da," Harrison babbled, reaching for Bernard. "Did you hear that?" Bernard's eyes went wide. "He said da-da." "He's been saying that for a week," Angela laughed. "But yes, I think he knows who you are now." Bernard finished with Gabriel and scooped him up, holding both boys now, one in each arm. "My boys, my perfect boys." Angela watched them. This man who'd once been so cold and closed off, now completely transformed by fatherhood. Bernard was patient, gentle, devoted in ways that still surprised her sometimes. He'd scaled back his work hours, refusing to miss a single milestone, a single moment of their sons' lives. "I was thinking," Bernard said, settling into the rocking chair with both babies, "that we should finally have that vow renewal, the one we planned before everything happened." Angela's heart skipped. They'd talked about it occasionally, but life with newborn twins had been all-consuming. "You still want to do that?" More than ever. "Angela, I want to stand in front of our family and friends and tell the world how much I love you, how you've given me everything I never knew I needed. We're already married, Bernard, I know. But that first wedding was about obligation and contracts. This one would be about choice and love." Bernard looked at her with such tenderness it made her breath catch. "Will you marry me again, Angela? Choose me again? Let me promise you forever in front of everyone who matters." Tears filled Angela's eyes. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." 1 month later, on a perfect spring afternoon, the garden where Dorothy used to sit was filled with white chairs and flowers. It wasn't the huge, formal affair Bernard could have afforded, just close family and friends, exactly as they'd wanted. Angela stood in the bedroom she shared with Bernard, looking at herself in the mirror. The dress was simple, elegant, cream-colored silk that flowed around her still-healing body. Diane had helped with her hair and makeup, and her father would walk her down the aisle again. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Harold said, appearing in the doorway. "Your mother would be so proud. I wish she could be here." Angela touched the pendant around her neck, her mother's, passed down through generations. "She is. I feel her every time I look at those grandsons of mine." Harold offered his arm. "Ready to marry that man of yours again?" "More ready than I've ever been." The ceremony was small but perfect. Bernard stood at the end of the garden aisle, holding Harrison while Diane held Gabriel, both boys dressed in tiny suits. When Bernard saw Angela walking toward him, his eyes filled with tears. Angela reached him, kissing her father's cheek before turning to Bernard. Up close, she could see he was barely holding it together. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "You're not so bad yourself," she whispered back. The officiant, the same one who'd married them the first time, smiled. "We're gathered here today to witness Bernard and Angela renew their vows and reaffirm their commitment to each other. When they first married, it was under unusual circumstances. But love has a way of blooming in unexpected places, and what started as an arrangement became something extraordinary." Bernard and Angela had written their own vows this time. Bernard went first, his voice thick with emotion. "Angela, when I asked you to marry me in that hospital chapel, I thought I was making a business arrangement. I thought I could protect my heart by keeping you at arm's length. But you broke through every wall I'd built, made me feel things I thought I'd never feel again. You gave me a family, a home, a reason to believe in love. You nearly gave your life bringing our sons into this world, and watching you fight for them showed me what true strength looks like. I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life loving you, supporting you, and making sure you know how grateful I am that you took a chance on a cold man with a contract." Angela was crying now, and Bernard gently wiped her tears before she could speak her own vows. "Bernard, you saved my father's life by offering me that arrangement, but you saved my life by teaching me what real love looks like. You've shown me that strength isn't about never being vulnerable. It's about being brave enough to let someone in. You've given me a family, a home, and a love I never thought I'd find. I promise to spend every day loving you, challenging you, and reminding you that you're so much more than the cold businessman you pretend to be. You're my husband, my partner, my best friend, and the father of my children. I choose you, Bernard, today, tomorrow, and always." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as they exchanged new rings, simple gold bands engraved with their wedding date and their sons' names. "By the power vested in me," the officiant said with a smile, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, you may kiss your bride. Again." Bernard pulled Angela into his arms and kissed her deeply, a kiss that held everything they'd been through, everything they'd overcome, and all the promise of their future together. The celebration afterward was joyful, filled with laughter and toasts. Diane gave a speech about how Angela had transformed her brother from a workaholic into a man who knew how to love. Angela's brother talked about how Bernard had become the brother he'd never had, how he'd saved their family in every way that mattered. As the sun set, Bernard and Angela found a quiet moment alone, standing at Dorothy's memorial bench while their sons slept peacefully in their stroller nearby. "She would have loved this," Angela said softly. "All of it, the renewal, the twins, seeing you so happy." "She knew," Bernard said. "Before she died, she told me she could see we'd fallen in love, that we'd given her the greatest gift, knowing I'd be happy after she was gone." "We gave each other the greatest gift," Angela leaned into Bernard. "A real chance at love, a family, a life worth living." Bernard turned to her, taking both her hands. "I want you to know something. If I could go back and change our beginning, make it a normal courtship instead of a contract, I wouldn't. Because our story is perfect exactly as it is. Every struggle, every fear, every moment of uncertainty brought us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." "Me too." Angela kissed him softly. "Though I wouldn't mind if the next few years were a little less dramatic," Bernard laughed. "Agreed. Let's aim for boring domestic bliss for a while." They stood together as the sun set over the garden, and Angela thought about how far they'd come. From a desperate woman and a closed-off man making a bargain in a hospital chapel, to this, a real marriage built on love and honesty and commitment. Her father was healthy. Her brother had graduated medical school, and she'd returned to nursing part-time, working with Bernard's foundation to improve healthcare access for families who couldn't afford treatment. Bernard had found balance, spending less time building his empire and more time building a life with his family. The company thrived under his renewed leadership, and he'd started a scholarship program in Dorothy's name specifically for children who'd lost parents. And Harrison and Gabriel were growing beautifully, two happy, healthy boys who would never know the fear and struggle that had preceded their arrival. They would grow up knowing only love, security, and the knowledge that they were desperately wanted. As if sensing their parents' thoughts, both boys woke simultaneously and began fussing. Bernard and Angela laughed, moving to comfort their sons. "Dinner time," Angela said, lifting Harrison while Bernard got Gabriel. "Team effort," Bernard agreed, and they walked back to their celebration together. A family united by love that had started as convenience and become something eternal. Later that night, after the guests had left and the twins were sleeping, Bernard and Angela lay in bed together, exhausted but content. "Thank you," Bernard said quietly. "For what?" "For saying yes in that chapel. For giving me a chance. For fighting your way back to me when we almost lost you. For giving me our sons. For everything." Angela turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving. For loving me even when it scared you. For being the man I needed exactly when I needed him." They kissed, soft and sweet, and settled into each other's arms. "I love you, Angela Ellison. I love you too, Bernard, forever." Outside their window, stars filled the sky, and in the nursery down the hall, two baby boys slept peacefully, dreaming whatever babies dream about. They were safe, loved, and part of a family that had been forged in fire and emerged stronger than steel. Bernard and Angela Ellison had started their journey as strangers bound by a contract. Two people desperate and lonely and afraid to hope for more. But they'd built something beautiful from that flawed foundation. A marriage based on honesty, a love that grew deeper every day, and a family that would stand together through whatever challenges life brought. Their story wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and had started for all the wrong reasons. But it was theirs, and it was real, and it was exactly what both of them needed. Sometimes the best love stories don't begin with love at all. Sometimes they begin with desperation and bargains, and contracts signed at midnight. Sometimes they begin with two broken people trying to survive, who discover along the way that together they can do more than survive. They can thrive. And as Bernard held his wife close, listening to the soft sounds of his sons sleeping through the baby monitor, he understood something profound. The arrangement that had brought Angela into his life wasn't a compromise or a consolation prize. It was fate giving them both exactly what they needed, even when they were too scared to ask for it. Love had found them in the most unexpected way, and they'd been brave enough to embrace it. That was all that mattered. That was everything.